Hi, this is Dr. Rayshawn Ray, aiming to speak truth to power, and this is my daily thought. How do we create civility, tolerance, and empathy in an uncivil and intolerant society? What we know that's going on right now, whether that be the horrendous mass shootings in Vegas, whether that be a church shooting in Tennessee, in Antioch, Tennessee, which is really close to my hometown of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, that I take personally for various reasons, whether that be Dylan Roof, white supremacist, walking into an African Methodist Episcopal church after people have sat down with him and welcomed him, as black churches tend to do. Anyone who's been to a black church knows that. And shooting up and killing 9 parishioners. Whether that be Sean Urbanski, a white University of Maryland student, stabbing to death Army Lieutenant Richard Collins, who was set to graduate from Bowie State, who was African-American, was set to graduate from Bowie State that same weekend. Whether that be a Muslim student being attacked outside of a Muslim center during a road rage incident. Whether that be Taylor Dumpson, who was the first African-American woman to become president of the Student Government Association at American University. Whether that be bananas being hung with AKA written on it for her sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and then a person posing as a construction worker coming in, hanging up Confederate flags, sticking cotton on the posters that he hung up around campus. Whether that be the numerous police killings that we could talk about, from Michael Brown to Laquan McDonald to Freddie Gray to Sandra Bland to Corinne Gaines. I mean, the list could go on and on. As we've seen justifiable homicides increase, these are what we call killings of police officers and the killings that they do to a citizen. Despite the fact that violent crime has significantly decreased. You put all this together, you see images from 50 years apart that look basically the same, with black people in a standoff with police. The more things change, unfortunately, the more they tend to stay the same. As we see white supremacist rallies, not just in Charlottesville, but around the country. And now we have a president in the White House who makes statements like, you just grab him. I tried the effort. 7. Then he said Donald Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. And then, of course, all the rhetoric that he said about Mexicans and Mexico. They're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing those problems with us, bringing their drugs, they're bringing their crime, they're rapists. And I assume some are good people. Oh yeah, that's exactly what he said about white supremacists, that some are good people. And it's pretty interesting because statistics actually show that immigrants who come to the country are actually more likely to do the right thing, less likely to commit crime, more likely to pay their taxes, more likely to work. Why? Because they're in a new place. They actually want to fit in. Oftentimes they're trying to assimilate. Of course, we know then there are issues around sexual assault and rape, which continues to rise on college campuses. And this isn't just specifically for students. I mean, we see administrators and faculty members engaging in sexual assault and rape against employees and against students. So the question becomes, how do we create civility and tolerance in an uncivil, intolerant society? Well, it's 5 things I want to quickly leave you with. 5 ways we create civility and tolerance. First, we develop a holistic life perspective. We do this by coming in touch with who we are spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically. What are the issues that we have, right? What kind of bugs us? What are the ways we might see ourselves not treating people as equitably as we should? And we primarily do this by developing a diversity achievement ideology. We become self-aware, come in tune with who we are. Developing a holistic life perspective. Second, we become socially aware, but we become aware of how people view us. Oftentimes when we have privileges, we're privileged not to necessarily realize the way people view us. That's part of what privilege does. Not saying that some people haven't worked hard for those privileges, whether that be social class, affluence, education, what have you. But when it comes to race and gender, sexual orientation, these are superficial forms of privilege. These are symbolic forms of privilege that end up manifesting themselves, and they become real. And they become real in their consequences for how people are treated better or worse. We become globally aware. This becomes being aware of how other people are treated. It's very, very important. We don't do this very well. We're not very good at understanding how other people are treated. And then we're able to use some agency and do something about it. Second, we have to identify trust points. So we're dealing with a competing curriculum, whether that be mainstream or social media. But there are places where we see very high levels of trust. That's medicine, that's science, that's education. This is why these components are very key. Scientists are extremely, extremely important. Educators are extremely, extremely important. People trust us. We have to do a better job of speaking to the public. Third, we have to reduce our own implicit biases. See, everyone has implicit biases. Implicit biases are simply an association that people make between two seemingly unrelated things and put them together, such as like a race and a weapon. And all of a sudden, one particular group becomes criminalized over another group, even though the other group is actually more likely to have guns and weapons. But one group is more associated with it. See, that's how implicit bias operates. And so we have to come in touch with our own biases. Once we come in touch with our own biases, because all of us have them, then we're able to work to hold them in check. And see, it's not just about diversity trainings, right? We have to be more specific. This is about anti-racism training. This is about anti-implicit bias training. And my colleague, Dr. Chris Marsh, and several others, we've been engaging in these types of activities with police officers as well as students and employees at companies. Third, we then have to take this information we've learned and create brave spaces. See, safe spaces is a term that I find problematic. I don't necessarily see any place at work or school to be a safe space. Unsure if it necessarily should be. They're supposed to be uncomfortable. So we have to create brave spaces. Brave spaces are where we actually work to build bridges, where we actually actively work to be color brave rather than color blind. It's not ignoring that race matters. And it's not about noticing other people's skin tone. I mean, you actually should recognize that people have different skin tones. That doesn't mean that we treat people differently because of them. We have to have candid racial conversations without racist intent. That's very, very important. Have conversations with your friends. Ask them what their experiences are like. Ask people who you work with what their experiences are like. One of the things that continues to baffle my colleagues is when I say, I've been stopped over 30 times by the police. I've been thrown up against the walls. I've been thrown on the ground. I've been handcuffed. I've had to go to court for speeding tickets, and a judge tried to lock me up for speeding tickets. I mean, these are the types of incidents that we're talking about. Of course, I shouldn't have to say I don't have a criminal record, and I have a PhD. That doesn't make me immune to the way that police brutality and racism operates in society. And that's what we want. We want social class to trump race, and unfortunately it doesn't. So we have to transform victimization into empowerment. See, people admitting that they might be victims or survivors of violence of any kind of way doesn't mean that they're playing the victim card. Instead, it means they're highlighting their experiences, and we actually need to pay attention to that because, see, when we focus on race as an experience, we start to understand racialized identities and understand that regardless of people's race, everyone has a racialized identity. The difference is that whites' racialized identity becomes normalized, so they think that everyone else shouldn't necessarily talk about race or think about race. And see, that's that privilege that allows people to not pay attention to it. That's how it operates. So, creating brave spaces means when you're at work by the water cooler, when you're with your family for the holidays, and your racist uncle, sexist uncle, racist auntie, like in the case of what Dr. Jason Nichols got on his voicemail, your mama, your dad, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your nephew, your niece, your friend. It's up to you to speak up. Because, see, you're having conversations with people who would never have conversations with people like me, and vice versa. And if you can speak up with your family, then you can end up speaking up with anybody. The final thing is to engage in racial uplift activism. There are many ways to do this, but I think one way to do it is to influence legislative decision-making. Call your representatives. Email your representatives. Sign a petition. Let your voice be heard. My colleague Leanna Sayer calls every morning to her local politician and lets them know what she thinks. So as always, conversations matter like Black Lives and Books, and I hope this has sparked one.